Hello, everybody, and welcome to Behind the Scenes, a podcast for Out of Frame. I am your host, Sean Malone, the creative director for the Foundation for Economic Education and creator and host of the Out of Frame video series on YouTube. Here today in studio with Paul Nelson, FEE's social media manager and Out of Frame shorts editor, and of course, on the screen next to me is Jen Maffasanti, our former, still writer of Out of Frame shorts, but former copywriter for the Foundation for Economic Education, and now the Director of Communications for the Libertas Institute in Utah. Jen, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. It finally warmed up around here.
Nice.
It's 52.
52. You know what? It's cold here,
is
though.
cold.
I woke up this morning and I asked I asked my robot what the weather was, and my robot told me that it
Go outside
was
and check yourself.
46. And I was like, that does not sound good for May in Atlanta. No. 46 was not awesome.
We have no gas and
gas crisis is happening.
Oh man, I feel real bad for the East Coast. Just so bad.
Yeah, a buddy of mine, a really, really good buddy of mine's a truck driver, and he was in South Carolina the last couple days, and he sent me a video of driving by a line of tanker trucks, and he told me, and this was like in the afternoon because he had texted me about it in the morning, and he said the line was like 3 times as long in the morning as the one that he actually sent me, and it was still like 10 tankers long of just trucks not able to get filled up, basically. So he was kind of like, yeah, you should maybe consider
get your plastic bags full of gas.
Getting your plastic bags full of gas. God. Yeah, it's tricky. You don't want to encourage any kind of a panic with this kind of stuff because, it will correct itself in a fairly short amount of time. We'll be fine. But at the same time, man, some of those memes, plastic bags,
just
bins,
storage bins,
storage bins. What are you doing, people? What are you doing?
I feel like the people who are panic buying gasoline right now are the same ones that still have 20 cases of Charmin in their garage from last year that they just haven't used yet.
That seems plausible to me.
I mean, good chance.
Good chance. Yeah, I mean, for those who don't know, I moved really far away from everything. I moved my house from where we are right now in our studio is in a part of Atlanta, in the Atlanta area called Norcross. And I used to live in an area that was about 25 minutes away from here, 25 minutes, depending on the traffic, never more than 30, 35, really pretty close by Atlanta standards anyway. I commuted this morning for the first time from my new house, which is way on the other side of town, and it was an hour and 15. And I feel like I did okay. There were not too many horrible stops. So I'm pretty sure it could easily be an hour and a half plus to get up here. So gas is kind of important to me at this point. If I'm going to make it all the way to the studio and make it home, it's a thing that I need to make sure that I'm prepared for. But, I don't have to do this that often, so hopefully my commute's, once a week or so. Yeah. It's not too bad. But I don't know. Yeah, the shortage is not making me happy. The other part of that, too, of course, is that prices went up a little bit, although prices probably didn't go up nearly as much as they needed to.
I mean, obviously, people are filling up plastic bags with gas.
Yeah, so there's clearly not that much disincentive to make sort of really poor choices about all that kind of stuff.
But guys, price gouging is evil. How dare you take advantage of people like that?
Yeah, I don't know that I want to spend the whole episode on that because we do want to talk about the Mitchells. Oh, wait, no, sorry. We're going to talk about Tom Clancy's Without Remorse on this episode. I was going to talk about Mitchells versus the Machines, but we're going to do that next week.
Sneak peek.
Sneak peek for next week. We're going to do that. But Tom Clancy's Without Remorse, and we'll get to that in a second. But I will say, yeah, the price gouging thing is so weird to me because the economics is so clearly not in politicians' favor on this. And it's been, you can make this argument 1,000 times over, and yet it still does not seem to make a difference to public opinion or to the politicians who set the policy. And yet it would clearly be the case that if you allowed gas prices to rise to whatever level was actually what it was, you wouldn't see the shortages. You would see people, me included, by the way. I filled up my gas tank the other day. I was on 2/3. I would have been fine to get here and back, and then I would have had to have, figured it out after that probably, and kind of, started to worry about that a little bit more later. But I did it right away because my incentive was to get as much gas as possible while prices were still in the, for me at least, it was it ended up being a little bit over $3. But like when I was looking at, prices like $2.90, $2.95, somewhere in there. But if prices were at $5 because we were at the peak of the shortage part of this, or we were like going right up into I'd made different choices. I'd have waited another few days before I got gas, because I could have done that. I could have driven my wife's car up here because she has gas in the tank. There's all kinds of other choices that we could have made, but price signals are incentives, and they're information incentives, and here we are. Grocery bags full of gas. it's pretty.
It's staggering how bad of an idea that is.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, maybe just as a public service announcement, gasoline eats through plastic. This is a thing that it does. It's very corrosive. When you're putting it in a very thin plastic bag from Kroger or
if you
Walmart
double bag
or whatever,
it, you're fine.
Not a wise move. Not a wise move. Also, gas goes bad. That's the other thing that you should be aware of. So doing the whole 30-gallon drum or whatever and letting that sit in your garage, also not a good choice. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah. I never thought Zoolander would come to life in front of our eyes.
This last year has been pretty good.
Stupidity at the gas pumps.
Yeah. It's a lot. Anyway, Jen, what have you been watching? What have you been consuming before we get into our actual main show?
Well, if you're on our Discord, and you should be, you may have noticed that I was so excited to watch the Netflix series Shadow and Bone when it dropped in April.
Because you'd read the books.
Yeah, I'd read the first two of
Naturally.
of the trilogy there. And so I was very excited to see the series. I enjoyed the books. They're not like your standard epic fantasy kind of thing. First off, it's very young adult. Okay. You're not going to have a lot of naughty words. You're not going to have any sexy times. It's not that kind of book. Don't get your hopes up. But it is very engaging, and it's an interesting story. And the landscape is much more like turn of the 20th century Russia than it is like medieval England for world building. And I found that fascinating.
I didn't say that earlier. It's very Russian. Like it is like you're in Russia, and all of the military uniforms are kind of World War I era kind of Russian. That was kind of interesting from a design standpoint. It also actually caused a problem for me, by the way. The main girl in the series, because I watched the show. The main girl in the series is constantly talking about how she looks different and she's being treated differently by everyone because she looks different. And then periodically we see evidence of that in the show. People call her names and stuff. But I'll be honest. She just looked like a Russian girl to me. I did not She didn't look any different. She was light-skinned and dark hair, and she just seemed like everyone else in the show to me. So that actually became a little bit of a narrative problem for me. She did not actually look nearly different enough for me to be like, oh, I get it. She's an outsider in this world of basically Russians and I guess sort of kind of like Central Asian type of people, but mostly just looked Russian to me. Everybody did. So
Yeah.
that part didn't work from my vantage point. I don't know if she's described really differently in the show, or in the books, but
Well, in the books, she's not racially different from the rest of the characters.
So
That
they
was something
added that and
they
added
threw
it
in.
badly. Great.
I mean, it could have been worse. It was not as cringy as I was afraid it was going to be. Although I don't think they really took into account just how much like Mongolian influence there is in the racial
Russia.
makeup of Eastern Europeans broadly.
It's a lot.
So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
a lot.
Yeah. And that's kind of
So
what
you're
happened.
not wrong there.
She's I guess the actress is half Chinese, I believe. And honestly, that for me at least, and maybe this is my own like inability to sort of see these kinds of differences, or maybe I should be more sensitive to it or whatever, but like it just didn't recognize anything other than it just scanned to me as just Russian.
Yeah.
Just scanned to me as the same as most of the other people in the show, as far as I could tell. But I enjoyed it. I was looking forward to sort of when I saw the trailers for it. It kind of reminded me a little bit of Carnival Row, which I liked, and so I was kind of hoping that it would be that. It's not quite as good as far as I'm concerned. I didn't enjoy it quite as much, in particular because I don't think I identified with many of the characters as much, or I didn't feel like the characters were quite as strong or as clear as in Carnival Row. But it's enjoyable. I'm looking forward to a season 2. I think there's some really good elements to it that hopefully will continue. Paul, on the other hand. What were you going to say? Sorry.
Sorry. I will say that the show, while, enjoyable for, it as its own thing, it was not as dark as the books.
Huh.
Like they could have gone darker. They could have gone harder on that. And it was there in the source material, and they just decided to lighten it up a little bit. And I can't say I blame them. It probably makes the show a lot more watchable, but the characters could have been a little bit more interesting in that way.
I wonder if that would have been better. I don't know. Paul, what's going on in your world?
So I wanted to bring up something that's happened in the Fee Extended Universe.
Fee Extended Universe.
So obviously we are speaking English. Obviously, most of what you know from Fee is in English, but we have a whole Spanish side to our organization.
We do.
And we had an event.
I was here in this very studio for that event.
This is still to be checked.
It's very exciting.
This is probably the biggest economic event in history.
I believe so. So the idea of this, so we did 4 record-breaking economic lessons. This was done in Spanish for our Fee en Español side of the organization. It's program. It's sort of a program, but it's also like it's very encompassing, like a lot of things. We've got articles in Spanish. We've got videos in Spanish.
It's what we do.
It's what we do in English,
but in Spanish.
But in Spanish for the most part. And the webinar event was meant to be a Guinness Book of World Records record-breaking event. And as far as the numbers are concerned, we definitely smashed whatever we needed to break that record. We had, while I was watching the event live from this studio, we were at over 10,000 participants in the live stream consistently throughout the live stream. So
massive.
Massive. And it stayed that way. It ramped up to about 10,000 in maybe 15 minutes or so. And then it just stayed that way through the very end. Even as we were concluding, this was maybe the coolest thing for me, is as we were concluding the thing, it maybe dropped by like 200 people, but we didn't even lose that many people. It was like 9.8 thousand or something like that when we shut down the live stream. So I believe, and again, don't quite quote me on this because the numbers are still being tallied, I think, or we're still trying to get an exactly accurate count, but it was around 12,000 unique attendees. And I'm not sure how many attended for more than half an hour, which I think was the rule for the Guinness side of things. Right. But it was a lot.
It was a lot.
It was way more than enough. And it was pretty awesome.
No, it was so great. Super proud of the team. And if you know just a little bit of the history and the political climate of Latin America, this is a big deal to spread the message of individualism and free markets.
Free markets. I think all this stuff, we've found a really good audience in Latin America a lot of the time because it is
lived it.
They need it. Yeah.
And they've lived the opposite side. I mean, it's terrible what you see happening, but
yeah. So that reminds me, one of the things, so you guys who watch Out of Frame might recall that I did an episode on the Jack Ryan series a while back, probably almost a year ago at this point, maybe more. Trying to remember when I did the Jack Ryan episode, but it's always had a ton of engagement in the comments, and there's always been a lot. And I had for a long time, I had pinned a long comment that I wrote that was on the common claim that was a rebuttal claim essentially to the video, that the reason that Venezuela is essentially a failed state is not because of socialism or because of central planning or because of any of that, but in fact it is because of the United States CIA intervention, which this is going to be a good segue into the movie that we're actually going to talk about too. But that's because the CIA meddled with the country, and that the United States put sanctions on Venezuela. The problem with this is that the sanctions that America has actually had on Venezuela up until 2019 were targeted towards very specific individuals. There weren't very many of them, and basically what they did was prevent these individual people as in their capacity as individuals, not as the state of Venezuela or the economy of Venezuela or whatever, simply from engaging with United States financial institutions, primarily the U.S. Treasury. So most of these sanctions were designed to stop drug dealers and things like that from, putting their money in U.S. Treasuries or putting their money in U.S. banks, things like that. I don't support sanctions like that, even really like that. I don't think they're very effective. I also think that they tend to give rise to an excuse from people in Latin America, particularly, you saw this with Hugo Chavez and Nicolas Maduro, where they would basically blame the sanctions, which had really very minimal effect on anything, for the problems that they actually caused. But that becomes a talking point for them, and it becomes an effective talking point, and it becomes an effective talking point in America, where there's a lot of people who dislike the U.S. government's involvement in those places and support socialism here, and kind of have have some skin in the game as far as it is concerned in terms of making that argument. Well, for the longest time, I had that comment pinned, and it's hundreds of replies, 350 plus whatever replies. Finally, a couple weeks ago, I actually unpinned that comment from YouTube, and instead I pinned the latest in what is hundreds and hundreds of comments from somebody who's actually Venezuelan, who said, thank you so much for making this video. Like, this is exactly what happened in my country. This is what I lived. This is what I experienced. I can't tell you how many of those comments I get. I mean, I get them literally every week. And I finally decided to get rid of the critical comment and the sort of the defensive post. Not that it got rid of it. I didn't delete it or anything. It's still there. You can find it, but and it should probably be a top comment at this point, because I'm sure it's one of the most engaged with comments. But I thought it might make more sense at this point to start highlighting people who actually lived the experience of socialism and point that out to people and say, like, this is why I make these kinds of videos. Like, that one did pretty well. They don't always do super well when I just talk about socialism or I just talk about those kinds of things, but like, it's important. And, it's, I think that doesn't, the fact that socialism is evil, and the fact that it does not work, and the fact that it impoverishes people also does not take away from the fact that that we can criticize the CIA as well.
Yep.
And there's all kinds of corruption in the CIA. There's all kinds of corruption in the way that the United States foreign policy works. But those things are not mutually exclusive. We don't have to look at one and say, oh, well, the U.S. government is all good and the Venezuelan government is all bad. That's not what this should be. So with that in mind, let's talk about Tom Clancy's Without Remorse, which, of course, gets into CIA corruption.
Mm-hmm.
And it gets into just general American foreign policy that may have some blowback, potentially. So this is a new movie on
Amazon Prime.
Yep. Yeah, Amazon Prime, starring Michael B. Jordan. I could barely tell you any of the other characters in the movie besides Michael B. Jordan. Guy Pearce played a, CIA director or whatever. Jodie Turner-Smith played. This was maybe the one sort of interesting turn for me was Karen Greer, who was the niece, I think, is it niece or daughter of the Admiral Greer, played by James Earl Jones, or originally he's been played by a handful of characters or a handful of actors, but that kind of was an interesting twist to me. You're kind of connecting the Tom Clancy universe here. The Tom Clancy expanded universe, I think. Look, hey, Tom Clancy was doing that before anybody. I mean, he had his entire, all of his books had some connection to some other, Jack Ryan kind of books. But I don't know. I mean, I like Tom Clancy in general. I've liked a lot of Tom Clancy movies historically, but now I've got two things. This one, the Jack Ryan show, and now Without Remorse, where I've just been kind of meh. It's just not.
Obviously, he's not around to have his input listened to at this point in time, and it's not surprising. Tom Clancy prided himself on realism and actually having characters that could be real.
Yeah. I mean, he put a lot of effort into, and look, I get a lot of this in the comments on the Jack Ryan video too. Oh, Tom Clancy got everything wrong about this or that or whatever. Look, I'm sure he did. He's a writer. He took liberties. He did all kinds of stuff. But in a world with where people, have the most, like the Ian Flemings of the world, where spycraft is just the most ludicrous over the top thing that you've ever heard of. Tom Clancy books are very grounded.
Yes.
They feel like they're, they are what they are also, which is a lot of times the product of a lot of interviews that Clancy did with actual special ops people and with CIA agents and FBI agents and stuff like that. And he put a lot of effort into that. And it just didn't have any of that.
Yeah.
It wasn't exciting to me, nor did it feel like the realism was there in the same way.
No, it's the story is pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Michael B. Jordan is part of an elite SEAL team, is set up from the jump by somebody.
Yeah.
And
they infiltrate Russia.
Syria.
Oh, Syria.
They're in Syria,
yeah,
and they think they're going to hit a Syrian safe house. Turns out it's Russians.
Right.
And that sets us off down a road where Russia retaliates, kills almost all of the SEAL team that was there, their family. Obviously, Without Remorse, the reason why Michael B. Jordan's character has no remorse is because they killed his pregnant wife.
Yeah.
In cold blood.
Ugh.
Pretty brutal. And so it's pretty basic beats, but when this trailer came out, it had everything I was looking for. It has CIA corruption. Count me in. Tom Clancy story. Great. Michael B. Jordan as your lead action star. This movie, so you always hear like movies like my personal favorite, Fat Man, that had no business being as good as it is.
Yeah.
This movie has no business being as bad as it is.
I totally agree. I feel like Jen felt the same way because we talked about this, and I watched your Facebook posts. Like, as you were watching the movie, it was just kind of like, ugh, what is this?
For an action movie, it was shockingly boring.
Yeah, that's how I felt.
Like, I was all
it did
set
not hold
up
my
to
attention very
watch.
well.
Yeah, I was distracted. I was all set up to watch 2 hours of Michael B. Jordan being awesome. And it did not happen.
And then you found out that you could barely see what was happening in the movie, so that was part of it too.
Well, yeah, there's that too.
I feel like every shot in that movie is so dark that I don't know what's going on. There was very little. Did they just not have a budget for gaffers? Come on. I don't know. There's, you think about like dynamic range in a lot of different contexts, right? Like dynamic range is a thing that you think about in terms of like not only color or in terms of like exposure, brightness, in terms of like the visual aspects of things. You also think about it in terms of audio. You think about like what's the range between what's the loudest point, the softest point, like, and where does that kind of ebb and flow happen throughout the course of a story or a movie or whatever, or TV show. And like, so I kind of want to see something that has variance to it, where that range is wide, but also sometimes you hover in this territory and sometimes you hover in that territory, and you are playing around with it so that there's actual interest that happens. I feel like this movie hovered in this sort of dark gray zone the entire time, both in its visual and audio execution, which I thought was I'm getting very technical in that sense of things, but like it didn't have like peaks and valleys. It was just the same. And it was never like explosive action, nor was it ever really totally quiet or had like moments of calm. Like it just was the same the whole time, I felt like.
I never really liked putting people on blast, but the director of this film, could you remind me of his name?
Yeah, I have to remind you of his name because he has done nothing prior to this that you would have heard of. His name is Stefano Sollima.
This is one of the worst directorial decisions to so to Sean's point, the shots. What you have this character, you have this actor.
Oh, he's such a dynamic actor,
who is
too.
Tremendous at bringing emotion
Yeah.
to fanciful characters. I mean, he's Killmonger. He's the best villain in MCU, and it's an outlandish. It's a Marvel movie, but
it's
you
a
feel
wild
connected
villain,
to him,
and he handles it so well. And also his work in Creed,
right?
I mean, there are so many things that Michael B. Jordan's done. Heck, even the Fahrenheit 451 movie that he did for HBO, the movie itself is not great, but he's great.
Yeah. So you have that caliber of actor. You have this kind of story that is actually interesting. Just looking in, CIA director sets up his own men because he is a Keynesian. But
yeah, we got to talk about that.
Yeah, we'll definitely get to that. But the choice to shoot everything in medium shots or wide shots.
Yeah.
And there's never any getting close. The closest they ever got to this was inside the car when he
where
made
you
the
literally
drop
have to be that close.
When he made the drop off at Dulles, which I mean, Dulles sucks. So I was like, that's actually a better time being stuck in that car than trying to navigate Dulles with suitcases and everything.
Yeah.
But anyways, there's never any kind of dynamic action or emotion that was brought out by any directorial decisions,
including when his wife is murdered. Like it's yeah, I just didn't feel anything about that.
I was expecting to be. I had heard bad things about this movie, but I
feel
was
like you would be
expecting
shocked by it, or like,
being a father that's went through.
yeah.
Like seeing being able to put myself in that position,
No.
it would normally
No,
that stuff
and
tears me
I
up.
think for me there was a part of it. So essentially, that scene. I'm really not spoiling anything because this is first act stuff, but it's he's down on the couch like listening to music or sort of falling asleep on the couch, and she's up in her bed, and then the minute the sort of Russian special ops guys come in to the house, it's not like it's a surprise. Like they make it kind of seem like there's somebody in bed and they're fully covered by the sheets and you can't see who they are. But that's not a surprise. We've already established the fact that she is the only one in that bed, or at least we assume that she's still the only one in that bed. So you already know that that's, kind of where we're going. So there's no surprise to the actual thing, but also they just kind of shoot the sheets. So you don't get the emotion of like her maybe waking up and going, oh my God, whatever. But then also he doesn't seem to express that much in the way of emotions afterwards either. So I don't know. It's just all, it's all flat for me. Yeah. Look, the one thing about it, and Paul just brought it up, is that we finally get to reveal, and we're going to spoil the motives of the actual antagonist. I think we could. Let's just spoil it. I don't even care. We're going to spoil the whole thing.
Yep.
Turns out
you don't want to watch this movie anyway. So.
You probably don't. But turns out that CIA director, whatever, like bureau chief, I don't exactly know what his title was, but the guy Pierce plays, Secretary Clay, is actually behind all of this, and what he's trying to do is start a war with Russia. Similarly, on the Russian side, he's engineered some kind of a similar problem, and so the idea is to sort of, pit Russia and America against each other. And this is by far the most interesting thing about the movie, from my vantage point, is that he actively explains why he's doing this, and it's pure Keynesian stimulus, like war is the health of the economy thinking. And so I guess we should probably back up a little bit, because a lot of our audience probably is not aware of this, or is not aware of the ideological split here. But like, Fee comes from an economic tradition typically understood to be Austrian school. The Austrian school started in the late 1800s with people like Karl Menger and Eugene von Bauer, and just various economists that came out of Austria. Some of the more important figures in the early 20th century, people like Ludwig von Mises also came, and Friedrich Hayek also came from Austria. There are a lot of that, thus why the school is so named. But the important thing to understand about the school of thought is that it is first and foremost a school that sees human action as the province of individual choices, first and foremost. So it takes all of the ideas about what an economy is, but starts really from the bottom up and says this is all the end result of a bunch of individual human beings making choices. This is very different from a lot of the way that neoclassical economics thinks, classical economics, and rather importantly to our discussion, Keynesian economics, which is based on the ideas of John Maynard Keynes, who was a British economist, actually around the same time, in the 20s and 30s, at least around the same time as Ludwig von Mises. Maybe not so much Karl Menger, but the Keynesian approach is sort of the macro view of the economy. It's very top down, and it's very looking at the economy as an entity in and of itself. And so Keynesians would describe things as like, well, the economy shifts this direction or that direction. There's booms and busts and things just because of what Keynes called the animal spirits or whatever. It's just people have periodic manias and whatever. And this is not. There are a lot of reasons why I don't like Keynesian thinking at all, but probably the worst of all is the idea that the state can manipulate the relative health and well-being of, quote unquote, the economy based on how much it's spending. Because one of the problems with this is that it has created an argument that we see all over the place that if we spend a ton of money, then the economy, if the government spends a ton of money, then the economy becomes better in some way. Because they're only looking at things like GDP, and they're saying, well, GDP grew when the government spent a ton of money. Well, of course it did. GDP includes government spending, so it's pretty easy to do. So the problem with this then is that you get people who argue that war, which is a massive expense always, can improve the economy. And as opposed to actually being destructive, immensely destructive. So here we have Guy Pearce saying we needed a war. He had 2 points, I guess. One point was, we want a common enemy. We want the American people to unite against a common enemy. So he is, a patriot, helping the American people come together after political divisions. And then the other thing was, he said that this would boost our economy because there'd be all this military spending that we would have to do.
It's the only reason we got out of the Great Depression.
The only reason we got out of the Great Depression was because we paid all this money to send soldiers and munitions and vehicles and every resource that we had overseas to get blown up and left in a field somewhere in France. That's why.
Yeah.
That's how our economy improved, is by sending all of the food,
right,
all of the engines, all of the metal, all of the fabric, everything that we had that could have gone into, family vehicles and cars and homes and butter for toast that didn't exist and all of these other things. All of that could have been, in the United States, actually improving lives, but instead it was sent over to Europe. And that somehow improved the economy.
Magic.
Broken
glass.
Oh my gosh. It's the worst.
Yeah.
It's the absolute
that is
worst.
one of the things that gets on my nerves so much about people who subscribe to this war is the health of the economy kind of thing.
Oh, so
not
bad.
realizing at all that war is the broken window fallacy writ on a scale that is almost unimaginable.
Yeah.
War does not produce anything.
No.
War is purely destructive, always, not only in treasure, but also in lives.
Yeah.
And it makes me so angry.
It makes me so angry because you look at, the lives part of it is also, it's a huge aspect of this too, because you say now suddenly the government is conscripting people into fighting and dying. And so this is another thing that people argue, look at unemployment rates. Well, yeah, if you conscript millions of people and send them, you've given them a job, but it's not a job that's producing anything that other people actually want or need. And it's not a job that is actually the one that they would necessarily want, right? And I want to be clear about this, wars happen sometimes, and you can't necessarily make the argument that you could make the argument there should just never be war, but that would be kind of a pipe dream. That's not really going to happen.
No, this is a Miss Universe pageant.
This is a Miss Universe pageant answer, right? But the reality is recognizing that wars happen and that sometimes wars may need to be fought or just you have no other choice but to fight a war does not change the underlying economics of war.
Right.
It is a grotesque amount of destruction and consumption. That's all it is. It is just people burning through resources that they may have accumulated or built in other areas exclusively for the purpose of going and destroying those resources somewhere else, either directly as bombs that get blown up. Literally, we're taking metal, the same amount of metal and minerals and wiring and everything else that could go into building, again, cars and refrigerators and computers and whatever else, instead goes to missiles and rockets and bombs and stuff like that. And instead of becoming the capital basis for developing a new company or something like that, it literally just gets blown up somewhere. So, okay, maybe you should argue and can argue that that has to happen for reasons that are extraneous to economics, right? Like this has to happen because it's, we need to protect this country or we need to do this or that or whatever. But like at the end of the day, like it's not a positive thing.
No, it's not. And this always kind of the worst villain in most movies nowadays are environmentalists. They just want to make your life worse. I think a close second are Keynesianists.
Keynesians.
They have a different way of just making your life worse. And that's instead of just forcing you to stop living the life the way you choose, they force you to either go to war or pay for things that have no use for anything.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same idea as, Milton Friedman sort of very famously, I think this was actually, I mean, he made this argument a lot of times, but like it came up in his series Free to Choose, but where somebody was trying to use the government to create jobs, and he saw in the background, like there were all of these big heavy machines digging ditches and things. Well, hey, if you want to create jobs, just give all these guys a spoon instead of a shovel, and you'll create millions of jobs because you'll have millions of people working on, digging a giant trench or building building something like the Hoover Dam with, small paintbrushes and spoons and stuff. So that's silly, and it but it's silly because it's exposing the point, right? Like the government can create an endless amount of jobs by making an endless amount of inefficiencies places. But those people could be creating actual value, and we could be growing the amount of goods and services available to the rest of the world, and that would actually help the economy.
You're seeing this play out in real time right now with our expanded unemployment benefits right now, and obviously this whole situation was created by the government and its reaction to COVID, but the thought that these people, the job openings that are happening right now is somehow supply and demand. No, it's like, okay, supply and demand, but then you just take a huge finger fist and just come down on the other side of it and say, okay, business owners, pay them more.
Right. Yeah. That's been a really bizarre thing. And then also I'm seeing tons of memes. Jen, I assume you're seeing the same right now where people are like, well, of course nobody, because a business owner will post something like, no, I've had this job opening on the market for months and nobody's applying, or, we've had 2 applicants for this position and whatever. And it's like, well, hey, just pay everybody, pay everybody a living wage. We're talking about jobs in a lot of cases that actually pay very well already, but which, you're talking about advanced manufacturing jobs and things not being able to fill people. You're talking about jobs that might pay, $50,000 to $70,000 a year that are struggling to find applicants. It's not just McDonald's at, $8 an hour or whatever that's struggling to find people, although I'm sure they're struggling in a lot of ways as well. But also, like, what is the society that you actually want? Do you want to make? I mean, you've got people, of course, who would prefer to make $8 an hour to play video games and do nothing all day versus making $8 an hour flipping burgers or something like that. But like only one of those things is actually advancing the amount of like goods and services available to other people. So
it should put to rest the argument for the UBI that says, oh, people will still work.
I don't
okay. Okay.
A very tiny minority.
Yes.
Very, very, very tiny minority might. Yeah. Yeah. Especially as you raise you raise that check, right? You raise the level of income people are getting paid to do nothing. I don't know why this is that controversial of a point. If you pay people to do nothing, they will happily accept money for nothing. Like there's nothing nature. Surprising about that.
It's quite the incentive. I will give you money to do absolutely nothing.
And there's no real time limit on it. We could just keep that going for years and years and years. Well, okay.
We'll just tax the rich guy. It's fine.
Just keep taxing the rich guy. I know. Yeah. That was an interesting twist to me for that show, because it was just like, oh, wow.
Oh,
He's just all kinds of wrong.
Oof.
And like, but he's wrong in a way.
So many levels too.
But he's wrong in a way that like lots and lots of people are wrong. Like this. So I was saying to Paul and Jen before we started the show, I had gone to Nashville for a few days last month, and we went to the Tennessee State Museum while we were in Nashville, and it's got a whole wall dedicated to the New Deal and the Tennessee Valley Authority and all this kind of stuff. And on that wall made exactly the same point. It said, and then the war brought us out of the Depression. And I was like, no, it did not. The end of the war brought us out of the Depression.
The total destruction of the major economies in the world, and we were the only one standing, brought us out of a depression. That helps.
A combination of nobody else being able to produce hard goods pretty much anywhere in Europe or anywhere in the rest of the developed world, combined with millions of young people coming back and joining a workforce that desperately needed them to make stuff. That's a pretty good 1-2 punch for rebuilding an economy.
So I guess war did work.
No. Yeah, I would say not so much, because we could have avoided the whole thing in the first place. But look, you're gonna get, and I do think there's a case to be made here a little bit, which is that like World War II, COVID and the policy response to it was exceptionally destructive. It was not uniformly destructive everywhere in the world, though. Some places like shot themselves in the foot a lot worse than others, first of all. And secondly, some people were hit by the virus worse than others. And so there are lots of places that are going to need goods and services that they were producing and now that they're no longer producing, but which maybe are produced somewhere else. That's going to be a lot of opportunities for the people who are producing them, elsewhere. But it's opportunities everywhere right now for us to get back on track. There are tons of open jobs and everything else. But this goes back to the broken window fallacy part of it, which is like getting back to zero from a massive amount of destruction is not growth, right?
Right.
That's not the same thing. It's not like when we are down by, trillions of dollars worth of economic activity, getting back to zero does not, it's a great growth rate, right? 2020.
We're building back better.
Down, right? We're building back better, but it's not, we're just getting back to the starting point here. So let's not go nuts about, our growth rates or whatever this year and next year and whatever. We're going to see some good growth rates because we're starting from a very, very bad place. But, it's not the same thing. So, I don't know. It's really weird to me that people don't. It doesn't take long to think this through, I feel like.
This is what speaks to me so much about the Austrian School of Economics and Thinking is I will be the first to say I will not read an economics book. I won't read a book regardless, but this is what, but especially an economics book. But this is what's so great about this way of thinking is that it's very simple and it's very applicable to your life. I know I don't even know what my preferences are. When we go to lunch after the show, I have no idea.
We're gonna have a debate about it,
and we're gonna end up going somewhere and spending money, but I don't even know what that is. So how could somebody in Washington D.C. know where to send the beef for production? I mean, you can't.
Paul assumes that he will be eating beef. It's a fair assumption. Know. But don't even know that.
It's a fair assumption. Yeah.
But don't even know that. I know, and I don't know. I think that's the maybe even the more salient thing to me. It's like your parents don't even know what you want to eat for lunch. Like the people who are closest to you don't know your wants and needs at any given moment. How in the world do you imagine some politician
you can't
thousands of miles away could have even the slightest clue what is in your best interests in those terms? You have to look at this stuff as individuals making choices and then rely on things like the price system and price signals in general, which we talked about at the beginning of this episode, to help you navigate supply and demand questions, right? You have to be able to navigate whether or not something is very scarce, whether or not it's widely available. And then you have to make judgment calls for yourself about like, okay, gas is $5 a gallon, it's $6 a gallon, $10 a gallon, who knows? Do I need it right now? Do I need to get gas so I can get somewhere important? Or
Is that place truly important to
is
get
that
to?
yeah, and is that place truly important to me? Am I just getting gas so that I can drive around town and peruse, antique stores? Or am I getting gas because I've got to go across town for work? Or can I work from home for a couple days if that's a thing? How you deal with those things is dependent on whether or not you've got the right information. And that information comes from all of these millions of interactions. Like it can't come from, Guy Pearce in Washington saying, this is what I'm going to decide.
And it's not like
Bizarre.
we don't have any evidence of governments trying to do this and failing miserably.
Again, I point you to Venezuela.
Yeah, it's not like we
Roman
don't
Empire.
have.
Tried real hard, or Russia,
And
USSR, China. Forget endless
And
examples.
the thing of it is that this system of price and incentives and individual action, it's not flawless and it's certainly not instant, but it is far more efficient than anything that could be centrally planned by a single person or a group of people, of experts. And that is the thing that I think escapes a lot of people who are opposed to free markets and allowing individuals to act however they choose, so long as they're not harming anybody else, is that they do see the flaws in
Sure.
this kind of approach to things, but show me one better.
Yeah.
Actually.
And by the way, you say it's not that fast, but I watched
It's faster than anything else.
So just going back to the gas prices thing, gas prices are capped, right? So there's a maximum amount that people are allowed to charge, in part because of the price gouging stuff, but also because there's cartels and there's all kinds of really terrible stuff in the gas world. But there is fluctuation, right? And I can tell you this, there's a gas station that's about 2 miles from my house that I have to drive by. Right. And when my wife and I went out to drive, we went to the grocery store and went to get gas. When we left, gas prices there on the sign were $2.99. By the time we came back 3 hours later, they were $3.40, something like that. Maybe it's $3.20 or something like that. In any case, prices fluctuated significant on that standard. I mean, it was very significant fluctuation in a matter of hours. So it's fast. It's not instant exactly, but it is fast. And prices can adjust fairly quickly depending on demand in particular areas. And I think that part of what was happening with all of these gas stations is that there started to be, when we left, there was a line down the street a little bit of cars waiting to get filled up. That's going to happen, but as that happens, prices should go up. You should see a reflection in the price from the change in demand and supply. So as supply goes down, demand is very, very high. We should see that price fluctuate.
And what's weird is people are okay with this.
To a little bit.
Well, they're okay with this in trading cards.
Sure.
You look at. I'm trying to find Pokemon cards to play with my son, and you can't find them anywhere. But Target, Walmart, they sign these deals to get the cards because the Pokemon company. I mean, they're Pokemon. They're huge.
Yeah.
But they are mandated. They can't sell them higher than this.
Really?
So then that enables. And this is the same thing.
Right, it's the video game.
It's the same thing.
Yep.
So that enables these
Yeah.
people to just follow the truck, buy
Those are
them
everybody's,
all, and then sell them huge.
My least favorite episode of, not mine, but our audience's least favorite episode of me defending
Scalpers
video
aren't
game
the real.
scalpers or whatever. But it's true. They are running essentially a cartel that says that you're only allowed to charge X amount for games. Well, as a result, you get shortages.
Yep.
If the actual market price is higher than that, good luck finding this stuff anywhere. You know, and clearly that's true of Pokemon.
I mean, you see it in sports cards too. It's weird.
Yeah.
We're okay with it there to an extent, but when it comes to stuff where it literally is a matter of life and death for some some like ambulances, stuff like that, we have people filling plastic bags up with gas.
Yeah, it's insane.
I think we should be able to fix that with a little bit of tweaking on prices.
Yeah. No, would be pretty easy.
No, Paul. It's mean.
It's mean. Don't do it. All right, so let's end this conversation here. I actually, I didn't think when we were starting to talk about Tom Clancy's Without Remorse, I didn't really know what we were going to talk about exactly because it was just like the movie itself doesn't feel like it gives me a whole lot, but I feel good.
That one line, one scene.
That one line was enough, and I think it gave us some stuff to talk about. We're going to end the main episode here, but if you are a supporter of the show on Patreon or Subscribestar, stick around, and we are going to answer some of your questions. For those who aren't subscribed, please consider it. It's patreon.com/outoframeshow or subscribestar.com/outoframeshow. You can find the links to that in the description. You can find it on YouTube. Definitely make sure you're subscribing to us on YouTube. Ring the notification bell. Also, I feel like lately, especially, our channel has been kind of throttled a lot, and that would really help a great deal if you guys would hit that bell icon. Also, follow us on Twitter, Instagram. I guess we're on Facebook.
Yep.
I don't know how much we care about that, but also join our Discord. That's the main thing. Yeah. Definitely join that. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you next time.